I'm very excited talking about a little special edition podcast series because we're going back to the Scandinavian roots of myself. And today I'm together with Christopher from Ziik, and we're going to be talking a bit about why we actually joined forces, what are this special edition podcast series all about, and what is the name, of course, of that series, and what we actually expect to get out of it. And first of all, welcome Chris to the
Thanks.
conversation here.
Thank you.
And we talked for a while. And we also done a webinar, and on that webinar, we figured out there was more to what we were looking into when it came to how do we actually build, a fantastic business. And this all comes down to, operators, the putting people first.
Yeah.
But for people sitting out there, they're probably thinking about why should I actually listen to Michael and Chris discussing this and why have they actually joined forces? Why did we do this, Chris? What was actually the reason why we had to do and go and do this special edition podcast series around culture as its essence?
I think that you already touched upon the first very obvious subject, which is people first. Putting people first is what we do at Seek. It's the whole idea behind our platform is to engage the employee, and therefore it's very natural for us to work with companies that are striving towards becoming better at getting everyone into the same kind of concept of what they want to do, and especially I think companies who might not just have figured out how to do it exactly. So we try also to help them understand how they can leverage the digital toolbox in order to just get that engagement going, but also all the way down to the single employee. So I think that's where we kind of come into this, and we work with a lot of frontline workers, especially within hospitality, right? And that's where we clicked
Mm.
and we did the initial webinar as well. So I think that's really where we want to, you know, add some emphasis. And myself and Seek in itself, we sit with so many companies, and we do see ourselves more than just a software. We see ourselves as a partner. We try to teach most of our customers and not just how to use a platform, because that's one thing, right? But how to think, how to be strategic about how you want your culture to kind of be the in the essence of everything you do and what that can translate to. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting factors in all of it. But yeah, now with this podcast series, obviously we thought that, well, we have a lot of Scandinavian clients, and these clients are really, really good at
Mhm.
putting people first, and especially expansion through people that they initially said, without the people, we can't get anywhere. And we really want to highlight those companies and showcase them here on the podcast.
And then another thing that's really for me as well, I think that's been in the conversation as well, is that my links to Seek goes back to my time in Denmark. I know and have quite a strong relationship with the founders as well, Per and Søren, especially been seeing Seek for the early days it was born, and actually the changes there, and also the philosophy around how you grow a tech company, which is very different than just going for hyper growth and going it expensive VC money that always have consequences. You've gone the hard way and actually developed lots about in the philosophy and in the spirit of what we are trying to promote here in general on the podcast. Business as a force for good, takes care of its people, community, and the planet. And the whole philosophy where I came from, or the whole idea from the podcast came from, the book Good to Great, which is about these businesses that is really people centric and actually built through very strong people processes and actually a lot of patience. It's not built over 2 years or 3 years, any kind of unicorn hyper growth. They're built with consistent improvement and slowly but sure growth that actually takes care of, just the business itself, but also the environment it is in. So therefore, for me, it was obvious we needed to do that. And then, of course, also I got really interested when Chris started saying, actually, here in Scandinavia, we actually some of our clients actually they are really, really doing some innovative stuff that can be part of, solving, some of the challenges this is within the industry, but also building companies that's just better. So, how many is it that we have decided to do, Chris? I think that's the next question. So, how
Yeah.
many have decided to do? And what we're gonna call this special edition series.
So we have 3 episodes coming up. and we call this a little episode or special episode expansion through culture, the Scandi way, obviously, because these are all Scandinavian-born companies, even though they today might have a global presence or European presence, depending on how you wanna how you wanna see it, right? So yeah, that's the name of the game because, as you said, it's all about the people, and that's where I think most Scandinavian operators are successful. They come from that philosophy as well. And especially today with the as we discussed in the webinar as well, right? The harsh climate behind the hospitality industry today, it's just a whole different ballgame. And I mean, myself, I worked there, it's about 6, 7 years ago since I last worked in hospitality. But even now, I can just see the struggles are proper and real.
Yeah, and they're probably 10x over the last 5 years, and it seems like every quarter that goes, the notch just dry, and actually the way differentiate yourself, it's not on your offer, your food and your brand. It's really about that culture as well, because that's also how you make it work, how you deliver that offer to the customers. Like you have a very stable culture that just actually attract and actually also really retain the right people, then you actually have a competitive edge. And actually, I think one of the guests, I'm going to come to the guest in a moment, said as I was doing the interview, he talked about that actually, those things that was like very special to do for people before now just foundational, knowing your basic people practices and actually having a baseline strong culture. If you don't have that, in his view, you are soon out of business, or you will definitely trade at a loss.
Couldn't agree more because in the end, right, the things that we did 10 years ago that were unique, as he said, they're not unique anymore. They should be standardized. And then the unique thing is about, I think, almost keeping that attitude or keeping that culture going when you scale up and become larger, because that's where the ballgame is very different. And to think, what else can we do? And speaking of those type of things, with Gallup's latest research, we see that there are so many issues in regards to how managers translate into their employees, the idea of how willing are you to change job. There's so many different aspects and so many different jobs out there, and that just creates a narrative where it's really, really hard to keep people. And if you can't keep people, especially within a customer facing industry, I believe you're pretty much screwed and you can't compete in the end.
Yeah, and it takes time to build as well, is also one of the learnings that came out. And if you don't have haven't planted the seeds, as one of them talks about, like culture is like a garden, then it's going to be very, very hard to have that when you need it at most, when the pressure arises. And also, if you operate, as many of these operators you will listen into, they operate in different markets, so different company cultures that is created on cross borders in a way, but all supported by the overall culture that is created at some point in time where they decided this is how we're going to run our business, and this is how people's going to experience as a customer and as an employee. One of the things that's come out of what we have done and looked into is also the expectations from employees. We talked a lot about that in the webinar, but maybe also that was one of the reasons actually why we wanted to see, is there actually people that is taking a different, you know, approach to this? Because if the expectation from employees are changing, then what are we doing then to accommodate that as organizations?
I mean, I think that's the expectation is kind of the most, I mean, I want to say I don't know how to really phrase it in the best way, but I think that the way you can put it essentially is that the expectations of an employee today is, in some people's sense, they would say, oh, it's absurd how much they expect. And in some, they would say it's very common and you should just accept that that's the way it is. Because I think that we live in such a global world where we have so much access to so much information that people's expectations just skyrockets with every success story they read. So the things that might have been really, really special before about even just offering, lunch at a workplace, it's just, if you don't do that, that's just strange. And then people won't work with you anymore. I think there's a lot of small, small things that people are just taking for granted. And that if you forget those things that are taken for granted, how can they continue to kind of develop forward? And I think it just goes back to the roots, as you said, the DNA. Where did you start? Because we see some companies that come in to us and they haven't really done the foundational work and then they realize after expanding into X amounts that they need to do it now, incredibly hard to get those people or those companies engaged. So it's really about setting the foundation from the beginning. That's really like one of the most interesting cases. And I think that especially if I can say one of the guests that you're going to have on, I think have done it really, really well.
Yeah, yeah, and I think you will see all three of them we have on will have different approaches because also they will do it in in spirit of their original culture, the way they do these things. The things that comes up that's changing all the times. What I hear, well, did the research we did when we did the webinar a couple of months ago is like they expect very exciting job roles, and compensation needs to be on level with industry, most times better. They also want autonomy. They want to be allowed to make decision. They want to be part of an exciting work culture where I feel safe. There's also across the interviews a number of people talking about how do we actually create an environment where people feel safe to both to ask and also feel they have permission to say their opinion. There's something about I want to be part of something where the company does more than just being a business. It contributes to a better world or community we are part of. Doesn't have to be a big crazy thing to be supporting the local football club, but it's very clear they made a decision and they
Yeah.
consistently are contributing to that. So actually I feel good about the organization I'm part of. And people say, well, there's not so much new about that because what I think is really interesting as we will listen through these three conversation over the next couple of months is that actually it's embedded into their business model. It's not a project on the sideline. And that's what I thought was really, really interesting. And I think another thing we should touch on before we go into who are they actually, it's also one of the things I saw, one of the patterns I saw in these conversation and as we were preparing for this was that no matter what hits them, because they're hit by the same challenges as anyone else, they navigate it and come out stronger and better. And they all, when you start asking into how they navigate, it comes down to their people, they said, and how quickly they could react or how quickly they can adapt as the next black swan hits them.
Yeah. I mean, they've all been through a lot of challenges lately, right? And the latest one that we discussed last time was the whole idea of the inflation that just,
Yeah.
you know, prices are skyrocketing and the cost goes up. And we already know that we already have, the margins aren't always the greatest or on our side. So then that also takes a hit. And yeah, in the end, the things you're talking about are purpose. You need to have some type of purpose, and it doesn't need to be the most crazy purpose ever. It just need to be embedded in what you do. And you can
Yeah.
really see that people want to learn as well. And if they get to learn and they get to kind of be appreciated and that they can take responsibility and they're being seen, I think that's also a kind of a thing that people forget about a lot of times. If you see your employees and you tell them you're doing good or you're telling them X, Y, Z, they would be appreciated. And that just creates that kind of grit in the organization. So when something hits them, like for example, last year with the inflation and then maybe they have to close down locations or they have to, reverse staff or cut staff or whatever it can be. If you have a strong foundation, the greatest going to be that the people will actually be willing to go the extra mile just to ensure that everyone is happy and feeling good because they look out for each other. And I think that is a huge difference between some companies where they would rather just flee and just go to the next one because they're not I'm not me, myself, and I are not connected to this company in any way, but it's a paycheck. But if you can do that extra step, you can really succeed. And that's really, really cool to see.
Yeah, and it's really you take it back again, Chris, which I think is really interesting. And they have the same conditions as anyone else,
Yeah.
but when they are hit by these challenges, there's this safety in the organization through the culture that is built with lots of different initiatives, practical things, and they will give great because I was very focused on as I was interviewing them to give. Please explain in detail what it is you do then that makes this a success. And of course, they can't cover all their secret ingredients and the principle they're not secretive about, but they just can't cover all of them. But they all in within the 10 areas of people you need to master from recruitment to training and development to benefits and compensations. All those 10 areas you need to cover. They just take a different twist in it, and all through the lens of their culture. So, who are they? People are thinking, come on, tell me who they are. So Chris, you are very kind. I think I want you to present the first one because you were the one, you have them as customers. So talk a bit about our first guest on the series going live tomorrow.
It's going to be Bassett Burgers and the CEO, co-founder of it is Simon Banner.
Mm,
And they have been a customer for, uh, I mean, with us at Ziik for a long time. I would say almost since there were 3, 4 outlets. And I think today they are, can't exactly remember if they're like 50, 60 plus. So they're very big. You might have the exact number in front of you. But the cool thing about Bassett Burgers is that they grew in a, I would say, a very high pace, but from our standpoint, where we saw them grow and we looked at, talking through them with the platform and helping them grow and how they used our engagement tool, it's just incredible the amount of activity that happens not from the management, but from each individual restaurant manager and each individual employee. And I think it's a very rare thing you see that you get employees who are between the ages of, 16 to 24 to actually be engaged with their workplace in the virtual environment as well in a really, really nice way without, I would say, without putting the emphasis on it directly, that it kind of comes from the culture in itself. So they are an incredible, cool company coming out of Sweden. Now they're in, I think, as we said before, US, they are in Finland, Norway, Sweden, and still not in Denmark where I'm sitting. So hopefully they're gonna make their way over here soon enough.
yeah, and it's gonna be really, really interesting to dive into that conversation. It was like, culture at scale is what you can expect from that. And then we have Morten Ortved from Dining Six, which is a Danish company that's also gone across borders. And within a decade, a bit more than a decade, they went from operating one cafe in Aarhus in Denmark to now actually running a restaurant group with different concepts within it. And he talks a lot about the founder's role, and they have 5 partners. They were originally 6, they're down to 5 partners now, and how it's actually been critical for actually their, they have an approach and personalities, and how actually the culture is part of that, and how they've been able to scale that, but also how they actually use the founder's strengths to keep the culture alive, and how they actually, for example, Morten is the one that goes and do all the entrepreneurial projects because he's very entrepreneurial. So he has that entrepreneurial touch points into the culture. And he also talks a lot about culture in their view is created by leading from the front line. So being very visible and part of the front line, but still remember there's the overall business to run, but actually have a very close connection with the front line. And he talks a lot about the special relationship they created with people over the year. They have lots of people that stayed with them and moved around with them, and they have new jobs to them because they expand across borders. It's an interesting company to be part of. And he also talks about, again, some of the more purpose driven things they're doing from small to large, and actually how important it is to involve your people in running your business and actually making each site the general manager's, own site, and how you do that. And then we have a more, I would say also in the UK, on European connection, known brand, Sticks and Sushi, where we have Andreas Carlson, the CEO for that, and he's been there for a long time. And prior to that, he was at Wagamama and that exciting journey as they were growing. And he talks about as well how you transition the culture between 3 different countries, and how you actually keep the Danish inheritance from originally Sticks and Sushi started in Copenhagen, and how you actually, as the founder moves away from the business, how you keep that alive, and actually how you ensure as the CEO you actually make sure that the culture is lived in every corner of the organization as you expand to Germany, where they just opened 3 sites. There's still a 12 in the UK and have another 12 in Denmark, but very different markets to operate in. And then we talk about the complexity about that, and how actually also one of the things we're going to touch about is on, so how do you actually yourself, when you've been in an organization for a long time and you're the CEO, how do you keep on challenge yourself to see the culture in the right place as a benefit for the business, both for the employees but also for the customer experience. If you ever go to a Sticks and Sushi, it's a very, very unique customer experience. And that is all fed from the very, very unique way and approach to people they had from I would say from the outset when they started out many, many, many years ago in Nansensgade in Copenhagen. And really interesting, of course, all these 3, as I had been wrapped up the interviews, is that these people have been around for decades and they are growing slowly but steady. There's not like crazy growth as well. And that's something we will touch on in all of them. It's controlled growth, they all call about, so we can actually make sure we can take the culture with us. What is it that I'm thinking, Chris? You maybe hey, we both have maybe a different view on this, but what are we actually hoping to see change? Why should I listen into this? Now people have like got a long intro from us, but why
It's
should
just
they listen in? What kind of change is this gonna do?
I think that a lot of the times it's easy to find a concept that works, or this is at least what we see, and then you just think, okay, I'm just gonna go crazy with this. And then you go so fast you forget kind of the bottom line to your business, which is the foundational culture, especially within hospitality, where the margins are thin. There's not a lot to compete on, but what you do compete on is how your people are towards their customers and how they also transcend by giving them opportunities, by giving them trust. So I think there is so much to gain in just terms of understanding the importance of every single employee within your organization, and take that with you and go back down to yourself and think, hey, do I actually use this mindset myself? Do I think about the employee and what they need? Or do I think, what do management, HR need, or what do management and operation need? Instead of thinking, what does the employee need and how does that translate into the manager? 'Cause I think that's kind of a lot of the different ways you can look at it. And I think a lot of these three companies, in my opinion, they have that mindset where it is the people first that do bring them success.
Yeah, and I think what I think one of the things I totally agree on that, Chris, and one of the things I believe and hope people get out of that is actually also they start asking themselves if actually they really have a plan slash strategy and approach to their people that's actually going to give them the competitive edge they need in 5 years time, because that's a running theme through these. And I'm sure you will get great ideas, but then of course you have to remember, if you really want to make this work, you need to find your own approach to doing this. You cannot just take their technical initiatives and implement them directly. There's not two sticks and sushi. There's not two battered burgers. There's not two dining sticks. There's only one. But you can still be inspired. If you can just take a few nuggets of these and implement them, I think it'll be a great listen. And actually, it'll also just bring the conversation up. Are we actually doing enough? Because actually, all of them don't believe they're very good at it when you talk. They're very humble about what they've done. So it's actually also, but that hunger or humbleness, it was makes the difference when the challenge comes around the corner. That's where the culture steps up to protect the brand, to grow the brand, where everybody else may be seeing decline in the same period.
Handle challenges, hopefully get some innovation in how you even just do small things within the workplace. If you can get I think it's a key thing that I hope that, I mean, I haven't heard all the episodes yet, but a key thing to me is, are your employees able to speak up? And not then just don't say yes, right? If you're listening in right now, but actually think about it. Do they have the guts? Not even, they shouldn't even have guts. Are they just able to say, hey, I think if we just do it this way differently, we'll save 5 seconds. And now if you can do that for 10 things, all of a sudden your seconds are counting, right? But if they're not, one, kind of encouraged to speak up, and two, are not encouraged to be curious on how to improve the business with you. Well, I think then you have kind of a food for thought, maybe just to think about those things and see whether that would be something that can really help you. And I think these companies, they are good at getting the employee engaged and getting them to feel, you know what, I do care, I want to learn, I see opportunity, and so forth.
I think that's a really good point, and what I was thinking as you're saying that, Chris, and then we'll wrap up. But I'm thinking also that the ability to not only have the conversation, but also keep on asking the difficult question, not think you're ever there. And I think there's this you're never done perfecting the art of building a people first, people centric organization. You're never done, and actually, you need to be on your toes all the time. And I think that's also what you will learn from that. Also just accept there's not, you will make mistakes and it's not perfect, but in a way is that, you try for 1% better every day. And that's, I hope you will take that away. And then of course, I hope you enjoyed them, and we would love to hear what you think. So yeah, please reach out to us. We'll have emails in the show notes. We will you can reach out to me via LinkedIn if you want. I'm sure you can do the same with Chris. Everything you can share and you learn, and you can maybe say what we want more of or what we want less of. Because of course, if this works, of course we'll always be open to do more of this in the future.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I'm a person who works for a company where they put people first, and we have a platform where try to put people first. So it's the whole idea behind it to me is just golden. So if you do enjoy it, if you think there's more companies out there that we should have a talk with, then for sure let us know.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Chris.
Cool.
You also enjoy the episodes, and we'll catch up in
Talk soon.
the end of the whole series.
Sounds good. Take care.